The frontier had a way of stripping a man down to nothing, sometimes by force, sometimes by choice. Ethan Cole learned that the night he collapsed in an abandoned trading cabin at the edge of the prairie. His clothes were soaked from the river he'd barely crossed alive, his body shaking with fever and exhaustion. With no firewood left and no strength to think, he peeled off his wet clothes and lay near the cold hearth, telling himself he'd either wake at dawn or not at all. The wind howled outside like a living thing. He didn't hear the door open. When Ethan woke, it wasn't morning. Firelight flickered against the cabin walls, warm and alive. The first thing he felt was heat, real heat, pressing against his skin. Not flames, a presence. He opened his eyes. She was sitting beside him, calm as stone, watching him the way hunters watch wounded animals. Her hair was dark and loose, falling over leather and fringe. A knife rested easily in her hand, not threatening, just honest. Her eyes were sharp, unreadable, wild in a way towns never produced. Ethan realized two things at once. He was alive, and he was completely uncovered. He moved instinctively to reach for something, anything, but the knife lifted slightly, just enough to stop him. "Don't," she said. Her voice was low, steady, not cruel. "You were dying. Now you're not." She tossed a blanket over him anyway, not out of embarrassment, but possession. "My name's Mara," she continued. "This land is mine. You crossed it. You slept under my roof." Ethan swallowed. "I didn't mean to—" "You meant to live," she cut in. "That's enough." Days passed in that cabin. Mara brought him water, herbs, meat cooked over open flame. She spoke little, but she watched everything, how he walked, how he healed, how his eyes followed her when he thought she didn't notice. She was no girl raised in lace and rules. She belonged to the land, barefoot on stone, confident in silence. When she moved, the world seemed to make room. One evening, as the sun bled red into the horizon, she sat across from him and spoke again. "In my people's law," she said, "a man found helpless and kept alive by a woman belongs to her until he leaves by his own strength." "And if he doesn't leave?" Ethan asked. Her gaze didn't waver. "Then he's chosen." That night the fire burned low. Ethan lay awake under the blanket, listening to the quiet breathing across the room. He felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not desire alone, but surrender. To the land, to fate, to her. At some point Mara rose and crossed the cabin. She didn't touch him right away. She simply knelt, studying his face as if weighing something older than words. "You're strong again," she said softly. He nodded. "Then stay," she said. Not a command, a truth. When morning came, the frontier looked the same. Wide, endless, unforgiving. But Ethan Cole was no longer a man passing through. He had been claimed, not by force, not by hunger, but by a woman as wild as the land itself. And he never slept clothed in that cabin again, not because he had to, but because some things, once given to the frontier, were never meant to be taken back. Morning didn't ask Ethan Cole what he wanted. The sun crept through the cracks of the cabin walls, warming the rough wood, the air heavy with smoke and silence. He opened his eyes slowly, half expecting the night to have been a dream. It wasn't. Mara stood near the door, tightening the strap of her leather satchel. She moved with quiet confidence, as if Ethan's presence, his choice to stay, had already been settled long before he arrived. "You didn't leave," she said without turning. Ethan sat up, the blanket falling to his waist. "I thought about it," he answered honestly, "but every road out felt wrong." That made her pause. She turned then, studying him again, not as a wounded stranger, but as something that now belonged in her world. The frontier didn't ask for promises. It only accepted proof. "Then you walk with me today," she said. "You learn the land that chose you." Outside, the prairie stretched endlessly, gold and wind and danger. Mara showed him where the ground softened after rain, where animals passed at dawn, where men should never camp if they wished to wake alive. Ethan listened. He learned fast. By noon, they stopped near a creek. Mara knelt, filling a skin with water, while Ethan watched the reflection of them both in the surface. Two lives crossing. Impossible to separate now. "You could still go," she said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. "Some men fear being claimed." "I don't fear it," he replied. "I fear losing it." That earned him the smallest smile. That night a storm rolled in, hard and sudden. Wind battered the cabin, rain drumming like war on the roof. The fire burned low, shadows dancing across the walls. Mara sat close this time, not touching, not distant. Just close enough for Ethan to feel her warmth steady and real. "In this land," she said, voice nearly lost to the storm, "we don't belong to towns or names. We belong to what we protect." Ethan met her eyes. "Then I'll protect this. I'll protect you." Thunder cracked overhead. Mara leaned in, resting her forehead against his, an unspoken bond stronger than any vow spoken in a church or town square. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something settled. When dawn came, the frontier looked no different. But Ethan Cole was no longer a wanderer, no longer unclothed in spirit, no longer unclaimed. He had chosen the wild, and the wild had chosen him back. The frontier tested every promise. Days turned into weeks. Ethan learned that survival wasn't about strength alone, it was about attention. Mara taught him how to read the sky, how to feel danger before it showed its face, how silence could be louder than gunfire. He was no longer a guest in her world. He was part of it. One evening, as they returned from checking traps, they saw smoke on the horizon, thin, dark, deliberate. "Men," Mara said quietly. "Not hunters." Ethan felt his chest tighten. Out here, men didn't wander without reason. They came to take land, water, people. They reached the cabin before sunset. Mara handed Ethan a rifle and met his eyes, searching not for fear but resolve. "This is where many leave," she said. "No shame in it." Ethan didn't hesitate. "This is where I stay." That night the riders came. 3 shadows circled the cabin, voices rough with greed and confidence. They laughed when they saw Ethan standing beside Mara, barefoot on dirt, calm as stone. "She claims him," one man sneered. "That don't mean nothing to us." Mara stepped forward. "It means everything." The standoff ended before it began. One warning shot cracked the air. The riders understood then. This land was defended, not by lawmen, by something older. They left before dawn. When silence returned, Ethan realized his hands were shaking, not from fear, but from what he almost lost. Mara touched his arm for the first time since that night weeks ago. "Just once, just enough. You chose," she said. "Now the land knows your name." Later, under a sky heavy with stars, they sat outside the cabin. No fire, no words. The world felt vast, but no longer empty. "In the towns," Ethan said softly, "they say freedom means standing alone." Mara looked at him, eyes reflecting the stars. "Out here, freedom means standing together." He understood then. Being claimed wasn't a chain. It was a bond. When he lay down that night, the frontier felt different, less cruel, less sharp. He slept without armor, without doubt, without the need to run. And when he woke, Mara was beside him, not guarding, not watching. Belonging. The frontier never gave without asking something in return. Winter arrived early, creeping across the land in sharp winds and silver frost. The cabin groaned at night, wood shrinking, fire struggling to keep the cold at bay. Ethan worked harder than ever, cutting wood, reinforcing walls, learning to hunt not just for survival, but for two. Mara watched him differently now, not as a stranger, not even as a chosen man, as a partner. One evening, as snow began to fall, she brought out something wrapped in worn cloth. She laid it between them near the fire, a simple band of leather marked with old symbols. "In my people's way," she said. "This is given when a man proves he will not leave when the land grows cruel." Ethan picked it up carefully. "And if I take it? Then the frontier will test you even more," she replied. "Because it protects what it values." He didn't hesitate. He tied the band around his wrist. That night the storm came. Snow slammed against the cabin, wind screaming like it meant to tear the world apart. The fire nearly died twice. At one point the roof creaked so loudly Ethan thought it would split open. Mara stood firm, steady as the earth itself. "We stay awake," she said. Together. They fed the fire shoulder to shoulder, sharing warmth, sharing silence. In that moment, Ethan understood something deeply. Love out. Here wasn't spoken in soft words, it was proven by endurance. When dawn finally broke, the storm had passed. The land lay quiet, untouched, shining beneath the cold sun. Mara stepped outside first, breathing in the frozen air. Ethan followed, standing beside her as equals. "You could still leave in spring," she said, not looking at him. He smiled. "Spring will find me here." For the first time, Mara reached for his hand. Not out of need. Not out of law, but choice. The frontier watched. and accepted. Spring did not arrive gently. It came with melting snow, swollen rivers, and the sound of hooves where hooves did not belong. Ethan was repairing a fence when Mara stiffened, her eyes lifting toward the ridge. This time there was no smoke, only movement. A small group approached on foot, slow and deliberate, carrying no weapons openly. "They come to see," Mara said. "Not to take." By sunset, the visitors stood before the cabin, elders of her people, faces lined with years and knowing. They looked at Ethan not with suspicion, but with judgment earned over lifetimes. One of them spoke. "You were found helpless. You stayed. You defended. You endured winter." Ethan nodded. Words felt small here. "The land accepts you," the elder continued. "But the final choice must be yours." Mara turned to Ethan then. For the first time since he had known her, there was uncertainty in her eyes. "If you stay," she said quietly, "you stay fully. No half-life. No looking back." Ethan thought of the towns he never missed. The roads that led nowhere. The life that had never felt complete. Then he looked at her. At the land. At the future standing silent and patient before him. "I choose this," he said. "I choose you." The elders nodded. No ceremony. No celebration. Just truth. That night, under a sky thick with stars, Mara tied a second band beside the first, stronger, marked deeper. "You are no longer claimed," she said softly. "You belong." Ethan understood the difference. Belonging wasn't being taken. It was being chosen again and again. When dawn came, the frontier stretched wide as ever. But it no longer felt wild. It felt like home. The frontier never truly ended. Years passed, not measured by calendars, but by seasons, storms, and shared silences. The cabin grew stronger. The land grew familiar. And Ethan Cole became a man shaped by wind and purpose rather than regret. Mara was no longer just the wild girl of the frontier. She was the heart of it. Together they built more than shelter. They built trust. When travelers passed, they were offered water. Not mercy, not threat, just the understanding that this land was watched, protected. One summer evening, as the sun melted into gold beyond the plains, Ethan stood at the edge of the ridge where he had once thought of leaving. The road beyond still existed. He simply had no reason to walk it. Mara joined him, her presence as natural as the wind. "Some men spend their lives running," she said. "You stopped." "I found something." "Worth standing for," he replied. She placed her hand over the leather bands on his wrist, faded now but unbroken. "The frontier didn't claim you," she said. "You claimed yourself." Below them, the land stretched endless and alive. Not cruel, not gentle, honest. That night, as they returned to the cabin, Ethan lay down without armor, without fear, without the weight of a past life pressing on his chest. He slept the way only free men sleep. And when he woke, it was not to be claimed, but to belong forever. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to share it with others.